Hello and welcome to News Central TV. I am Adebola Adeduba. The headlines. Adamawa State shuts public and private schools over measles outbreak. Ihekaire Electricity Distribution Company slashes tariff for Band A customers. Chadians vote in first presidential election after 3 decades. Details shortly. Let's begin by telling you that the Adamawa State government in northeast Nigeria has closed down public and private schools following the outbreak of measles in the state. The closure notice was contained in a statement signed by the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education and Human Capital Development, Aisha Umaru Inyola, on Monday. Umaru said the closure was to mitigate the spread of the disease and to enable the State Primary Health Care Development Agency to vaccinate the vulnerable age group. At least 42 children have been confirmed dead following the outbreak of the disease in the state. The ministry therefore announced Monday, May 13, 2024, as a new resumption date for the school. Nigeria's Senate President Godswill Akpabio has blamed the dwindling economy of the country on embattled former governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele. He, however, urged Nigerians to be patient with President Bola Tinubu as he labors to fix the country for the betterment of all. Akpabio, who described the economy as foamy, maintained that Tinubu has been trying to deploy his ingenious know-how to salvage the economy. The Senate President laid the blame at Ikot Stadium at the weekend when his Kingsmen from Akwa Ibom Northwest Senatorial District hosted him and his National Assembly colleagues in a grand reception since he became the president of the 10th Senate of the Federal Republic last year. The River State Governor, Siminalayi Fubara, has dismissed any notion of political crisis in the oil-rich state, saying his administration has provided focused leadership and governance to the people. Fubara, who received members of the House of Representatives Committee on Public Petition at Government House in Port Harcourt, said his goal for the Rivers people was delivering good governance. The governor explained how the pressure from the unwarranted political crisis served as an enabler to strengthen his commitment to service that is now impacting lives positively. Rivers State has been embroiled in crisis after a strained relationship between Governor Fubara and his erstwhile political godfather and former governor of the state, Nyesom Wike. Earlier, human rights lawyer Ekene Henry was on the news and shared his thoughts.
That reside here in Rivers State, and those of us who are indigenous to the state have experienced what we'll describe as a mix of the intention to actually advance the welfare of citizens in the state, and then another aspect of it, a deliberate orchestrated distraction of that intention. And what the effect has been is that the people of Rivers State have actually been worried about their aspirations and then the expectations of good governance, especially after the election and inauguration of Sir Sim Fubara, who is the current governor and, of course, the chief executive officer of the state. And then we only have been fortunate here that we haven't got that really broken down to a very disturbing state. Maybe we'll give credit to the leadership style of the governor and, of course, the security agencies, and then even the intervention of civil society organizations and even the people of Rivers State, who are very hospitable and peaceful. Otherwise, we would have had a real degeneration of affairs of business.
The Ihekaire Electricity Distribution Company has reduced the tariff payable by its Band A customers to 206 Naira 80 kobo per kilowatt from 225 Naira kilowatts per hour, approved by the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NEC. The spokesperson for the IKEDC, Olufadeke Omomorodion, disclosed this in a notice on Monday. According to the notice, the downward tariff review of the Band A customers would take effect from Monday, May 6, 2024. Under the approved review, Band A customers who were charged 225 naira per kilowatt are now to pay 206 naira 80 kobo per kilowatt. The decision to crash the tariff may not be unconnected with public outcry over the increase in the electricity, which industry observers, civil society organizations, and labor unions have described as insensitive. Tariffs for Band B, C, D, and E remain unchanged. Telecommunication companies are sounding the alarm over potential disruptions to connectivity as construction progresses on the extensive Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway. Just days after Multi-Choice warned subscribers of technical downtime, telecom firms are voicing concerns about the impact of construction on their infrastructure. Telcos are urging for urgent dialogue with the Ministry of Works to address potential risks and implement robust mitigation measures. While discussions with the government are pending, telecom firms are cautioning High-Tech Construction Company Limited, entrusted with the project, to proceed with care to avoid damage to critical national infrastructure. The Lagos-Calabar corridor serves as a crucial hub for submarine cables linking Nigeria to Europe, including the West Africa Cable System, Main 1, Glo 1, ACE, and NCSCS. The highway's construction has already led to demolition of properties and recreational centers in Lagos, underscoring the project's magnitude and impact. Over this past weekend, there was an outrage over the demolition of structures by the Lagos State government at the Aro-Jobe and Mende Estate in Maryland, Lagos State, Nigeria. According to the state government, the exercise is meant to reclaim the right of way of the Odo-Iya Alaro channel. Our correspondent Bettina Unwili reports.
I'm a supporter of this government. When they say I believe in raising this government, but this is not how you raise a government. This is Iwule-Eko. This is the destruction of Lagos.
The Lagos State government has demolished parts of Aro-Jobe and Mende Estate Villa, clearing the channel to ensure better flow and prevent flooding. According to the Ministry of Environment, it was noted during a visit that structures at Mende Villa Estate are obstructing the channel without observing the mandatory 15-meter setback.
It is so unfortunate that we have to do this, but they've been on this since 3 years ago, and the plea had always been, give us more time. So if you choose to give them even 3 months, they'll say ask for more time, and the rains are coming. So it's not just taking the decision on the spot. That's not the way we operate in the environment and water resources. It's a painstaking process, and we'll get to the root of it.
While the government alleges to have sent out notice of the demolition in 2021 and 2023 respectively, residents remain adamant about not getting any prior notice, especially as they have constantly been up to date with the payment of their land use charge.
We never got any notice. We have spoken to the developer. The developer said he never got any notice. Our houses were not marked. What is a notice? A notice is to tell someone that this is what I want to do with timelines. We didn't get anything. So if they have, they should show us. They should show us who signed it. Where is the copy? We don't have any of such.
As a responsible citizen, I pay my taxes. I mean, look at this estate. It has been here for how many years? We pay land use charge. The government knows about us. We've paid millions, and there's evidence. I might not be a lawyer, but there's a paper trail to show that applications have gone, permissions have been granted, and that is why I believe that this estate was not brought down as quickly as other places were. Weeks before this happened, other places were, maybe because they didn't have their documents. Ours was a special case because we did have documents, and the Honorable Commissioner came to engage us.
It's quite unfortunate how residents of the Mende Estate Villa 1 slept as landlords but woke up as tenants, and some homeless and squatting because of the demolition process that is going on here. Now, a lot of the residents have expressed their concerns ranging from security to health and even health issues. When you look at the fence by the canal that has been brought down, Residents have said that scavengers come in from there and they no longer consider themselves safe. Even the unaffected residents have concerns as to how these scavengers would affect the estates. It remains to be seen how the government of Lagos State will handle the situation, as a lot of residents, if not all, still claim that the government gave no notice before this demolition took place. In Lagos, for News Central, Bettina Nwili.
You're live with News Central TV. Let's take a short break. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. In a major step towards urban development in Nigeria's northeast, Borno State Governor, Professor Babagana Zulum, has flagged the construction of the 113-kilometer Maiduguri Ring Road project. The initiative is a milestone in the state's efforts to modernize its infrastructure and enhance the quality of life for its residents. Our correspondent, Umaru Kirawa, tells us more.
Maiduguri, the capital city of Borno State in Nigeria's northeast, in recent years witnessed a significant rural-urban migration. This is unconnected with the traumatic years of insurgency that ravaged the region. Borno State Governor and his team are here to flag off the Maiduguri Ring Road project designed to alleviate traffic congestion, improve connectivity and spur economic development in the state capital.
The Maiduguri Ring Road is a brainchild of the current administration that covers Maiduguri with about 113 kilometers of roads and layouts that is supposed to enhance economic development, enhance security, solve the problem of housing deficit, and a host of others that would help the living condition of the populace of Borno State. Your Excellency, as you can see, this first phase is starting from this axis down to Tungushe axis, covering about 12.9 kilometers.
This urban renewal initiative is part of a broader strategy to also revitalize Borno State, which has faced significant challenges in recent years due to the activities of insurgents.
This is the first phase of the ring road, 16.5 kilometers. And inshallah, as our economic situation improves, we shall not hesitate to expand the scope of the work to cover the entire 100 kilometers of the ring road.
A check of an initial 1 billion naira has been handed over to ensure that the livelihood of the farmers affected by the project are protected and their rights are fully respected.
We will invite investors to come and build houses, while state government will also get a fair share from the houses that they will build. Then they will sell to the communities. By doing so, very soon, we shall cover the entire area.
A thriving, secured and commercial hub anchored on dignified people is part of the larger vision of the sustainable urban renewal efforts of the Zulum-led administration. In Maiduguri for News Central, Umaru Kirawa.
And now to security matters. Concerns over amnesty granted to repentant terrorists in Borno State are escalating following the devastating attack on a military formation and multiple assaults on police stations. The region has been rocked by a series of violent incidents, prompting urgent scrutiny of the effectiveness and implications of the amnesty program. Security analysts and community leaders are voicing apprehensions over the potential misuse of amnesty privileges, with fears that some former militants may be exploiting the system to rejoin terrorist factions or perpetuate further violence. The recent brazen assaults on military and police installations have reignited debate on the balance between reconciliation efforts and national security imperatives. Authorities are under pressure to reassess the vetting and monitoring mechanisms within the amnesty initiative to prevent the recurrence of such attacks. Coming up, Chadians vote in its first presidential election polls after 3 decades. We have details shortly. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. The news continues in Central Africa, where Chadian presidential candidate and Prime Minister Success Master Casa's vote in Njemena's district of Abena. The Prime Minister facing junta leader Mahamat Idris Debny has been announced as a stooge by critics in the absence of any other serious challenges. Once a leading opposition figure, Matra has come under fire from other critics of the regime who suspect him of striking a secret deal with Debby's government. Since joining the government, the leader of the Transformers Party has softened his stance. He is now advocating reconciliation with the government, which he had accused of perpetrating the Debby dynasty and orchestrating the bloody repression of October the 20th.
Je voudrais inviter chaque Tchadien et chaque Tchadienne à sortir. Tous ceux qui ont montré qu'ils veulent un changement massif, de sortir massivement et d'aller voter massivement de façon pacifique. L'important, c'est d'avoir eu leur nom sur la liste électorale. Et même s'ils n'ont pas de pièce d'identité sur eux, ils peuvent, grâce à un témoignage de 2 personnes, pouvoir voter. C'est ce que je viens de faire. Ceux qui vont être dans les bureaux de vote, et ça a été confirmé, y compris par le président de l'institution chargée, c'est qu'ils ont le droit, à la fin du dépouillement, les délégués qui sont dans les bureaux, etc., ils ont le droit de filmer le procès-verbal.
In a similar vein, ahead of the Chadian junta, General Mahamat Idris Deby cast his ballot at a polling station in N'Djamena. The presidential election marks the end of a 3-year military rule with an unprecedented match between Deby and his prime minister, Success Masra, the former opponent of his regime. In power since April 2021, the current leader was proclaimed president by the army on the death of his father, Idris Deby, who was killed on the battlefield after ruling for more than 30 years. The 40-year-old ruler had initially pledged to move to civilian rule after an 18-month transition before extending that period and finally announcing his candidacy for president. And now to East Africa, where the death toll from weeks of relentless rain and floods in Kenya has climbed to 228 as authorities warn of continued crisis condition. Despite escaping major damage from tropical cyclone that weakened after hitting land, Kenya and neighboring Tanzania are still grappling with torrential downpours and the looming threat of further floods and landslides. In western Kenya, the river Nyado overflowed early on Sunday, overwhelming a police station, school, hospital and market in Ahero, Kisumu County. While there are no immediate reports of casualties, local police caution that water levels are still rising with the main bridge outside Kisumu along Nairobi Highway submerged. The region has been besieged by weeks of heavier than usual seasonal rains, worsened by the El Nino weather pattern, wreaking havoc across East Africa. And to unpack this, I'm joined by a climate change consultant, Nancy Omolo. Good evening. Glad to have you join me.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me in this station.
Now, reports indicate that death toll has now risen to 228 as a result of the flood. What else is happening that we don't know of?
Thank you so much. It's a very sad moment, and I would like to convey my condolences to the affected people. So far, the government of Kenya, as of yesterday, had reported around 228 people who have been killed by the floods. And these are the floods which are affecting almost all parts of the country. This is Nyando. This is the Athi rivers, which has burst. And also we have Masai Mara. So it's almost in various parts of the country, but the numbers could be higher than what we have. And beyond that, we also have people who have been reported missing, which are over hundreds, maybe now heading to 200. We have around 150,000 people, so maybe now it's maybe heading to 200, because yesterday alone 600 people were displaced. And some of them are at the camps. The government has actually set up camps in schools in different parts of the country. But some people have also gone to their relatives. So maybe the people who have gone to stay with the relatives are not being counted as the people who are in the camp. And generally, we've had the destruction of the infrastructure. Some trains are not able to operate. The buses are not moving around. cars have been swept away. The crops in the farms have also been swept away. So we're also looking at a place where we are going to have food insecurity because crops have been swept away. We are looking at a situation whereby we can have outbreak of malaria and also outbreak of other diseases which are related to water-related diseases because many pipes have been swept away.
Quite a number of impacts this flood would have. But do you think there are certain factors responsible for these flood that has claimed lives?
Generally, we're talking about climate change because with the climate change, we've actually predicted more increase in floods and droughts because just before the floods, we had really intensive droughts whereby most communities did not have water for their livestock. And now we're also having the floods, which has come with a lot of destruction. So actually in climate, we call them, these are climate extremes, whereby if the rain comes, it's destructive. When the temperatures are too high and the drought is also very extensive. So these are things which have been predicted, and even the El Nino was predicted. The only difference is that we didn't expect it. The government did not expect that this is going to be very intensive. It has happened before in some last decades, but they did not see how intensive it's going to be. And it's not only Kenya which is affected, Tanzania is affected, Burundi is affected, and even Tanzania, Burundi, Ethiopia, we've seen these floods affecting Brazil. We've also seen them affecting a country like Dubai. So it's not very specific to Kenya only.
Just to follow up on what you said about climate change, we know at times certain activities or behaviors of people contributes to flood incidents. So would you say this is a human factor or just an act of nature?
I think it's a combination. When we have increased population and people are building, some of them are, we can say that is human nature because there are some areas, the riparian areas, for example, in Kenya, we saw floods affecting Nairobi and people have built very close to the river. So when we had River Athi burst its bank, we find a lot of houses, and these are the middle class, they were flooded and people could not come out of their houses and they had to be rescued. We saw also in some low-income areas where people have just built next to the rivers. So actually, the government is actually warning people, and it gave people 48 hours to evacuate if you're living next to these riparian areas. So we can say that to a certain extent, we have some of them are because of the human action, but some of them are also the nature because sometimes it's not raining in your place, but because, for example, Lake Victoria has received so much rainfall and has moved backwards, then you find River Nyando bursting its banks. Or sometimes you're also in Masai Mara, whereby, this is a touristic area whereby it was really affected, lots of hotels were swept away. So it's both human nature, some of them it's related to human activities, but some of them is also the nature. And considering that this is a global issue and it's not just a Kenyan issue, but what is important is that, how are our governments prepared to deal with this kind of situations?
In fact, I was going to go
even
there,
if they tell
Nancy.
people.
Just to chip in there, Nancy, talking about the government, I was going to ask you, you took the word right out of my mouth. I know you talked about the government setting up camps for people affected by the floods. You also talked about warning people, the government warning people to evacuate these areas prone to floods. But then when it comes to preventing future occurrences, what has been the response from authorities or the governments, like you said?
I think scientists, these are research which we've done, and we've actually predicted that in the next 30, 40 years, this occurrence, the climate extremes are going to be much more frequent. But most of the time, I don't think the government take it really seriously and plan ahead, because what we're seeing is kind of reactions. For example, when you tell people to evacuate their homes or go to, high areas, and you've not prepared anything for them. So basically, when people are being evacuated from their homes, they're going to the nearest schools. And this nearest schools is just simple classroom. So you find that mothers, children, even the men are sharing the same classroom. They do not have even cooking facilities. And, even access to the toilet is not so good. And some people are on medication. You have people of different ages. So you find that there's no really proper preparations. And even now, schools were on holiday and they're supposed to reopen a week ago. So now the government has closed schools indefinitely, because if children were to go back to school, where these people were displaced going to stay and where the children going to learn, and also considering that some schools are also flooded and some of the bridges cannot go. So I think there need to be much more awareness. We need to have, we have devolved 47 counties in the country. And so far we can't say that any country is prepared, maybe like it has evacuation centers, maybe it has got certain marks, because when you visit countries like Bangladesh, they put those things in place because this is a country which is always prepared to deal with floods. If you look like countries like Dubai, because they have much more resources, and even their level of preparedness is much higher. So the government still needs to do a lot. It needs to take the early warning seriously, and also there needs to be sensitization at the local level. A country like Kenya, we've done a lot of sensitization to farmers when it comes to, for example, we're saying we're going to receive long rains. So instead of planting maize, maybe plant beans. So
Nancy,
giving that information is been developed from national to county level, especially to the farmers, livestock keepers, to the fisher folks. But
Nancy,
really, we've not put in place systems to evacuate people in terms of this, like such calamities of floods.
Indeed, Nancy, we hope the government hits the core to create more awareness about flood in Kenya. Thank you so much for your time on the news. Nancy Omolo, climate change consultant. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much. Bye.
You're live with News Central TV. Let's take a short break. Stay with us. And to talk about the measles outbreak in Adamawa State, I'm joined live on the news by Commissioner for Health in Adamawa State, Felix Tangwami. Good evening. Glad to have you join me.
Good evening.
Let me start by asking you, why do you think we have an outbreak of measles in Adamawa State?
Well, the reason is because of non-compliance to the rules of vaccination. You know, there are some communities, because of beliefs, that they felt they should not be vaccinated, and that exposed them to susceptibility. And so when there was an attack from this virus, those communities were affected. So we have what is called non-compliant communities. Usually in the outbreaks like this, especially that of measles, or in vaccination, you have people who felt they shouldn't be vaccinated. They have this belief that if they do, the population can be reduced, or their female children cannot give birth to children again when they get married. So these are some of the factors that caused the measles outbreak. On the whole, the sure reason for the outbreak is lack of getting the vaccination so as to build immunity against measles.
Now, you talked about vaccine hesitancy being a contributory factor to this outbreak of measles in Adamawa State. What steps are you taking to sensitize the people in taking vaccine to prevent future occurrence?
Yeah, we have been mobilizing. We have had sensitization visits, and the disease surveillance officers in their localities are also doing a lot of advocacy. The governor has involved all commissioners for people to move back to their local government areas to ensure that people are sensitized to see the need to take these vaccines when health workers come around for vaccination. Those areas that were affected, vaccination is going on, reactive vaccination is going on, and we plan to do a mop-up vaccination for every community that we have trace of such outbreak. So therefore, a lot of advocacy is going on, a lot of education is going on, and enlightenment to have the people take these vaccines, and they are responding positively.
We understand that public and private schools for now have been shut down in Adamawa State to prevent, further spread of measles. Beyond this, what other measures
Yes.
are being taken to curb the spread of measles in the state?
Well, I've earlier on informed you that we are having a reactive vaccination in those areas. And like you rightly said, the disease is a highly communicable disease, having 90% secondary attack or rate on susceptible people or persons that were not vaccinated and come in contact with those that are infected. And therefore, that is what informed the closure of the school for another 1 week. And this is done, this part of the measures is taken to ensure that people remain in their communities to get vaccinated, especially those that have not received this vaccine, so that when they move out of the communities where there are outbreak or there were outbreaks, they cannot spread it to other areas. So we do it, that can be said to be a kind of quarantine, community quarantine, so that people don't move from one place to the other, taking advantage of reopening of school or resumption and spread this disease further to communities or localities where they are not affected by the outbreak of the disease.
You talked about reactive vaccination. If you could just expatiate, what do you mean by that? Reactive vaccination.
Whenever there is an outbreak in a community, and people are getting infected, you need to react to the situation. You need to get people vaccinated. That is what it meant, that when there is an outbreak of an epidemic, it is necessary for the health workers to move to such communities to ensure that people are vaccinated. So there's an outbreak, you react to that outbreak by getting into those communities and ensure that the communities that are affected are indeed vaccinated. And in this case, those that are most affected are those who couldn't take the vaccines. And therefore, when there is such an outbreak, you need to move to the community. You need to react by going to such community or settlements and ensure that people get vaccinated. That is what we meant by reactive vaccination.
Now, what's your message for those who suspect they have measles? What should be their first point of call?
They should call at our local primary health facilities. We have very comprehensive primary health facilities in all the local government areas and all political wards in Adamawa State. And so if they suspect that they have symptoms of measles, they should quickly report to those facilities. And besides that, let me also inform you that, like I mentioned earlier, our disease surveillance and notification officers are also in those localities. It is their duty to really trace the outbreak of such disease. They know the symptoms, and they know also that they have to take samples of those who they suspect to have such symptoms, and they are to report it to the state epidemiologist so that the persons working in the laboratory can also ensure that these samples are taken and tested. So we have these surveillance officers in all the local governments, and anytime they see such symptoms in a person, and they are right now in the fields because of these problems, it was because they were there that we were able to dictate the outbreak, and therefore they are there. They are also helping the settlements and communities concerned to ensure that they are taken to nearby facilities. So online tracing is there. They are line tracing the people because there's what we call line tracing and active case search. When there's an outbreak like this, you go for active case search. It is not just left for looking at the signs and symptoms. No, when in a community, you have to get people to get their samples, you get them tested to know whether they are also infected or not by others that they have come in contact with, since this disease can be easily spread through cough, sneezing, and contact.
I wish we had more time, but thank you so much for shedding more light on this issue. Felix Tangwami, Commissioner for Health in Adamawa State, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
The crackdown on Nigeria's crypto industry has left its young residents feeling mistrustful and bewildered. The Central Bank of Nigeria and the National Security Advisor are planning stricter regulations, marking a significant shift from the previous administration's approach. Despite this, Nigeria has shown significant interest and growth in cryptocurrency transactions, particularly in remittances. However, there are concerns about the impact of the crackdown on the industry's future and job opportunities. Dr. Iwa Salami, Associate Professor in Financial Law and Regulation, University of East London in London, UK, joined us earlier on Business Edge.
The Financial Action Task Force, puts recommendations out there for that, the Nigerian authorities can actually follow. Again, there are solutions that, Nigeria can require exchanges to comply with and sort of rectify in order for us to know what is happening on those exchanges. So I wouldn't really say that these actions are necessary to comply with, to be taken off the grey list. No, because there are ways that we could regulate to ensure that the Nigerian regulators can actually get what they want in terms of knowing who's transacting on the spaces, in terms of implementing sort of KYC, preventing financial crime, money laundering. So, I mean, if we're saying this is to get them off the grey list, I think there are other ways to actually go about it than actually instituting regulations that potentially stifle the industry and potentially sort of prohibit quite a.
Aruna Quadri will confront South Korea's The Sung Cho in the third round of the men's singles at the fate of Angola, Libya, and Morocco will be decided this month as the three African representatives learn their opponents for the 2024 FIFA Futsal World Cup in Uzbekistan. The eagerly anticipated draw, to be held on the historic Registan Square in Samarkand on May 26th, will reveal the paths of the three countries as they gear up for the futsal's biggest stage. For Libya and Morocco, the tournament presents an opportunity to build on their growing pedigree in sport, having featured in multiple previous editions of the World Cup. Angola, however, will be heading into uncharted territory as debutant on the global stage. Meanwhile, Libya and Morocco will be hoping to avoid potentially daunting group stage clashes against the likes of record five-time champions Brazil and holders Portugal. And that's all on the news at this hour. But before we go, let's take a look again at some of the major stories. Adamawa State has shut public and private schools over measles outbreak. Ikeja Electricity Distribution Company has slashed tariff for Band A customers. We also told you that Chadians have voted in first presidential election after 3 decades. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen and follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch us live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Adebola Adeduba.